Hey there, this is Seth Schaffer from Team Just Cause Robotics, and today I need to talk to you all about the Huge vs. Hydra match. I'll discuss what went down that was questionable from a rules standpoint, and what Battlebots is likely to do in response, plus what this all means for future seasons of the show. I'll break this video up into 3 sections: what happened before, during, and after the fight. For each, I'll talk about the relevant rules if there are any. I'll also address whatever Battlebots have said publicly, and might bring up the commentary of Jake Ewert or Jonathan Schultz if relevant. Before I get started, I'd like to invite you all to let me know your own thoughts about this fight in the comments. Pre-fight config. Firstly, let's get the obvious stuff out of the way. Was there any rule violated by Hydra in attaching this cow catcher, or as Jonathan called it, a bike rack, to their robot? Well, no. There's obviously a ton of robots who have different attachments for different opponents, Bloodsport included, and this has always been perfectly allowable provided that the robot weighs in under the limit, which we were assured Hydra still did. Battlebots also shared a video to prove that Hydra could still activate its flipper with the attachment on. This is critical since the rules clearly state the following. Every bot must have a real weapon. If the weapon does not look like it can damage or incapacitate another bot, that bot will not be accepted. If your bot does not enter the arena with a functional, effective weapon, you will forfeit your match. As you can see from this clip that Battlebots put on Facebook, Hydra was still able to use its weapon, which was all that's required given how the rule is currently written. Jonathan Schultz, among other people, brought up after the fight that this is Battlebots, not Sumobots, and active weapons are required. He felt as though in order to show up at a competition that requires an active weapon, you should also have to, use it. But the rules don't say anything about that, which is very frustrating not just for him, but for many Battlebots viewers seeing this fight. With that, let's move on to the fight itself. During the fight. There were perhaps 3 controversial things that happened during the fight. The first was Hydra pinning Huge without touching Huge, and therefore not pinning Huge. The second was the lack of any active weapon use from Hydra. And the third was the judges awarding Hydra the win over Huge. One thing that really bothered me was the pinning. The rules state that, quote, robots may not win by pinning their opponents. Referees will allow pinning for a maximum of 10 counts per pin, and then the referee will instruct the attacker to release. If, after being instructed to do so, the attacker is able to release but does not, the team may be disqualified. A weapon that is designed to partly or completely cover or smother an opponent robot is allowed. However, covering a robot may be considered pinning, depending on which robot is in control. One thing that was brought up by Andrea Galately during their Tale of the Tape episode about this episode of Battlebots is that the definition of release is, well, not really defined at all here, and that it wasn't very clear to the referee or to Jake Ewert that he may or may not have actually been releasing Huge, since the rules don't say that you need to drive like 10 feet back or 6 inches back or whatever. I think this rule is poorly written not only because it doesn't specify what releasing means, but also because it doesn't include a special case for cornering the other robot and boxing them in without actively holding them against a wall. The rule also never states that pinning requires touching the other robot at all. One robot is pinning another robot when one bot, quote, holds an opponent robot stationary. This definition does seem to allow for behavior like we saw from Hydra during the fight, where he could clearly point out that Huge was able to drive backwards at least a few inches, and with Jake clearly shouting, "I'm not touching him," which certainly made it sound more pedantic. Here is where I think Battlebots really screwed up though. Remember, the rules state, if after being instructed to do so, the attacker is able to release but does not, the team may be disqualified. Hydra kept Huge in the corner for a total of 37 seconds, far longer than the 10-second allowable pin, and even longer than the 30 seconds allowed for holding another robot while moving around the box with them, which is definitely not what was going on here. But because of the way the rules were written, the referee wasn't certain whether this truly constituted a pin. Therefore, Hydra wasn't disqualified and went on to win the match via a unanimous judge's decision. I think almost everybody agrees this was not a very entertaining fight, and that's largely because watching 2 robots sit in the corner barely moving is incredibly dull. Nothing really happened in this fight. The reason it was hyped up so much and made to air is because Battlebots seems to want to drum up controversy this season. Nobody wants to see fights like this in the future, and that includes Battlebots. I cannot speak to how or why the judges voted the way they did, because I can't show you the scorecards since Battlebots did not release them publicly this time, but I think it's obvious that Hydra controlled the fight, although you could definitely argue both ways about damage and aggression. I don't want to get into that now though, since the real issue is that non-use of an active weapon, in my opinion. Post-fight. Let's hear directly from the Battlebots Facebook page. Quote, "This match illustrates some problems with our rules that need to be updated and that we apologize for. But first, this post is not to throw shade on Team Waiachi. They were smart, found a loophole, and went for it. That's always going to happen in a sport with exceptionally smart engineers like Jake and his family. If anyone is at fault and deserves blame, it's Battlebots, not Jake, not Team Waiachi, not the ref, not the judges. We will be updating the tournament rules and judging guidelines, but we want fans to know that we want our rules and guidelines to allow bots of different designs and novel attack strategies to have a path to victory, but not at the expense of never using a functional, perfectly working active weapon. There's a lot to deconstruct here, and we are reading and appreciating all of your comments. The Rule Committee will be meeting in the off-season to conduct a full review of all the controversial matches and making the appropriate updates. This will be done with much consideration and with bot builder input. Fans need to know that Battlebots takes this very seriously. We are not and never will be a fake reality show. Battlebots is a young, evolving sport that we care deeply about and will always endeavor to improve upon. This match caught us off guard, and it's clear we need to update a few things." Later they added, "We didn't like the match, but we still love Jake and Team Waiachi. People hating on them should blame us, not them. We screwed up. They were smart, found a loophole, and went for it. That's always going to happen in this sport." So, where does this leave us? Battlebots is almost certainly going to add an addendum to the rules which states that a point penalty will affect either the damage or aggression score of any robot which willfully refuses to use its working active weapon during a fight. They're probably going to add a cornering rule to the pinning section of the tournament rules as well. Most likely this will make things a little harder for control bots, but for all those concerned they will be going away entirely. I highly doubt this is the case. Control bots are now, and in this modern era, always have been far more difficult to win with, and this is primarily due to just how much easier it is to knock out an opponent with a spinner. It has nothing to do with rules against pinning or enforcing the use of an active weapon. It's just physics. Personally, I thought the huge Hydra fight was pretty boring, and I agree with the intent behind these changes, but a poorly written rule can do just as much harm as no rule at all, which is why I don't want to say, "Yay, everything's better now," just yet. Once the rules are actually updated officially, I'll give them a look over and see what I think. Outro. Until then, this has been A Builder's Thoughts. If you liked this video, hit like. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe and hit the bell icon. And in the comments, let me know if you want to see more robots in Battlebots without spinning weapons, or if you're down for every fight to come to a quick and destructive end. Thanks for watching.